Welcome back, everyone. I've had so many of you ask me to make a book summary review video covering the absolute classics, and well, today we are opening the pages of what is literally the most influential treatise on conflict ever written. In this explainer, we're going to do a definitive dive into Sun Tzu's masterpiece, The Art of War. We'll break down these ancient strategies that have, quite frankly, shaped world history, and we'll see exactly why this text is still absolutely required reading for leaders all around the globe today. Let's get into it.
2,500. Just let that sink in for a second. That is how many years ago this book was born, right in the middle of a super bloody civil war. But what's truly mind-blowing about The Art of War is just how incredibly modern its applications still are. This isn't just some dusty ancient relic. Its teachings have literally guided how conflicts are fought for millennia, everyone from the Japanese samurai to generals fighting in the Napoleonic Wars. But it doesn't just stop at the battlefield. The ripple effects of this ancient text are huge in modern politics, in sports, and yeah, in everyday business. It's just as relevant in a high-stakes corporate boardroom today as it was on an ancient battlefield. Crazy, right?
Now, to really grasp this book, we have to look at where it came from. The author, Sun Tzu, who was a Chinese military commander, a strategist, and a philosopher, emerged from this really brutal era of civil war. He had actually just successfully defended the state of Wu against its neighbor to the west, Chu. And out of that intense crucible of real-world survival, he wrote a text originally called Master Sun's Military Methods. It was made up of 13 distinct chapters, with each one diving into a specific aspect of warfare. Put them all together, and you've got the comprehensive masterpiece we now call The Art of War. Okay, let's dive into this. Our explainer today is structured around 4 core tenets from Sun Tzu's 13 chapters. First, the ultimate strategy guide. Second, strike at the weakness. Third, outthink your enemy. And finally, number 4, the art of deception. Moving right into section 1, the ultimate strategy guide. Now, for Sun Tzu, strategy definitely wasn't some casual pursuit. It was quite literally a matter of life and death, a road that leads to either total safety or absolute ruin. The most crucial point here is actually kind of counterintuitive for a book that's, all about war. Sun Tzu firmly believed that winning with as little unnecessary combat as possible is the true key to victory. It's not about just destroying everything in your path. Supreme excellence actually consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting at all.
Okay, section 2, strike at the weakness. The secret to breaking an opponent's resistance without a fight is knowing exactly how to exploit their specific vulnerabilities to your advantage.
Avoid what is strong and strike at what is weak. It sounds so incredibly simple, doesn't it? Yet history shows us time and time again how often armies, and businesses for that matter, completely ignore this advice. They stubbornly crash strength against strength instead of just finding that path of least resistance.
So, let's look at this brilliant example of that concept in action. Picture this. It's dawn. The Athenians are in a seemingly hopeless situation, going up against the massive Persian army. But instead of throwing in the towel, they do the unthinkable. They attack. But they don't just charge in blindly. They follow Sun Tzu's logic to the absolute letter. Step 1. They wait for the exhausted Persians to disembark from their ships, stepping onto land on shaky legs after a full month at sea. Step 2. They strike immediately, right before the Persians can even get their war camp set up. And step 3, they press the attack before those soldiers can be properly supplied. They completely dodge the Persians' numerical strength and hit them exactly when and where they were most physically and logistically weak.
Moving on to section 3, outthink your enemy. Sun Tzu was absolutely adamant about this. Brute force is secondary. Mind over might is the real path to victory.
If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Just let those ancient words sink in for a second. This whole philosophy boils down to complete situational and self-awareness. And to really grasp the staggering power of this mindset, we can look at a much more recent historical conflict, but one in the mid-1960s between the North Vietnamese Communists and the United States.
Let's just look at the sheer tactical asymmetry here for a moment. On one side, you've got the American superpower armed with vastly superior manpower and firepower. On the other side, the Viet Cong forces, who were significantly outmatched in terms of traditional troops and weapons. But rather than facing the Americans in a head-on clash, which would be striking at what is strong, the Viet Cong turned to unconventional guerrilla warfare. They used hit-and-run strategies to keep their own casualties incredibly low while still inflicting major damage. And even more importantly, they used their unparalleled knowledge of the terrain. They dug these massive networks of underground tunnels to literally evade carpet bombing, and they laced the landscape with booby traps. So despite being heavily outarmed, they neutralized a superpower simply because they understood and executed Sun Tzu's philosophy. They outthought their enemy.
Let's move to our final section and see how this builds into Section 4, the art of deception. Masking your true intentions wasn't just a neat little trick in Sun Tzu's playbook. It is literally the foundation of all military success.
Sun Tzu famously wrote, "All warfare is based on deception. Hence, when able to attack, we must seem unable." He goes on to explain that when deploying our forces, we have to look completely inactive. When we're close by, we have to make the enemy believe we're miles away. And when we're actually far away, we have to convince them we are right on their doorstep. It is entirely about controlling the narrative and manipulating the reality that your opponent perceives. And if you want to see the ultimate modern application of this, we just have to look at the World War II invasion of Normandy, D-Day. The Allies had to invade, right? But they desperately needed Hitler looking in the completely wrong direction. So what did they do? Check out this unbelievable list of misinformation techniques. The British invented completely fictional units of troops and stationed them in Scotland. They flooded the radio waves with easily interceptable bogus chatter about an overseas assault. Then, Allied spies who had secretly infiltrated the German ranks reported those exact same developments to validate the whole thing. I mean, they even took aerial photos of planes and tanks lined up for an invasion of Scandinavia, except, get this, most of them were literally just inflatable blow-up models. Through pure, masterful deception, they actually convinced Hitler that 350,000 troops were primed to attack from the north. Absolutely wild.
And because of that massive web of deception, dozens of German divisions were shipped off to bogus locations, literally just sitting around waiting for an imaginary army, while the real, critical battles were happening somewhere else. It is a perfect textbook illustration of Sun Tzu's tactic of dividing the enemy's forces to conquer them. And this played out on an even grander scale on D-Day itself, with Soviet forces keeping roughly 1 million German troops tied up on the Eastern Front, which allowed the massive Allied invasion to actually succeed on the Western Front. By dividing the enemy, the Allies secured victory and ultimately won the war.
So from ancient Chinese civil wars all the way to the beaches of Normandy and the jungles of Vietnam, the art of war just proves that human conflict, strategy, and psychology, they remain remarkably constant. It all comes right back to self-knowledge, truly knowing your opponent, striking at their weakness, and mastering the art of deception. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up our explainer today. Knowing your enemy and knowing yourself. How are you going to apply these 2,500-year-old strategies to your own modern battles? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.